Well, the Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your den of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
Hi everyone, Daphne Lage here. Join Nita Lanning and me on the Ragin' 2 The Vlogs show, where we talk about everything, nothing, and all the bits in between. Looking for hour-long conversations about indie comics, social media marketing, and crowdfunding, with the occasional rant and story time? Head on over to the Ragin' 2 channel on YouTube, Mondays through Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern to join in the chat.
Hit the button.
Ed Gein, Demon Hunter, on Indiegogo. After a deranged demon escapes the bowels of hell, Satan is forced to send a damned soul back to Earth as a demon hunter. Armed with a sacrificial dagger, Ed returns to his old stomping ground to capture the demon before the universe is destroyed. Ed Gein, Demon Hunter. Issues 1 and 2 available now on Indiegogo. Prepare for the ultimate face-off.
We've crossed paths more than once. I've whispered in your ear, shown you harmless little temptations. I am unknowable, yet you know me intimately. But you can always know me better. Collected here are 20 twisted tales that will thrill, chill, incite, and delight you from some of the most imaginative minds your species has to offer. This exclusive Indiegogo printing of The Devil You Know Better will be limited and numbered, with signatures from Mike Barron and Hart D. Fisher. Stretch goals achieved for this campaign will add interior chapter illustrations by Stefano Cardacelli. The Devil You Know Better. Back it on Indiegogo today, while you still can.
And it is 7 o'clock Central Time. It is Saturday night, and it's all right to talk about comics tonight because we are here for you to discuss with the LCS guy, Michael Tierney from Little Rock, Arkansas. Michael, how are you today?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Doing all right. I thought your mic quit for a minute there because your mouth moved and nothing came out. I'm like, oh, no, not again.
At least I don't have a thunderstorm pounding all over around me this time.
Yeah, that was fun time last time. We all had thunderstorms going on, so it was we got through unscathed. Wow, Mike, I'm gonna start off with something that you might not be aware of going on online. Did you grow up reading comic books, Mike?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you were you like a nerd kid?
Actually, I had what was considered to be terminal leukemia. and my parents were hopping me on a train. That was the travel way back, when the dinosaurs still roamed the earth,
Yeah.
and running me by train up to Kansas City or KU Medical Center, KU University, and stopped at a train station and said, "Well, pick out a couple things to read." So I got Turok, Son of Stone, and Uncle Scrooge, and that was my introduction to comics.
I had no idea that you were treated for leukemia as a child.
Yeah, I'm a cancer survivor. Actually, I have never met another survivor of what I had. It was so rare. All they ever called it was a rare form of leukemia. And amazingly, my next door neighbor caught the same thing. Well, he didn't make it a year. I've never met anybody else who survived a year with it. I've had customers come in with it. And, I had a sheriff from down south in Arkansas drive up to thank me after his son passed away. He said, "Well, you inspired him to really fight that last year of his life." And because he had the same thing. And nobody ever makes it more than a year. And the doctors told my parents, said, "Well, he'll never make 30 with the trauma he's been through." Because I was a guinea pig for a new wonder drug then. So you're looking at the test person for cortisone, which is real common nowadays.
Yeah.
But you're looking at the guinea pig. They shot me so full of that stuff. It bloated me up to where I remember a nurse coming in one time to give me a shot. And after she went through like 5 packs of 4 needles and she couldn't find a vein, and all of a sudden the needle sticking out one side of my hand and the points coming out together, and she freaks out. I'm like, "Okay, can you do that after you get that out of my hand?" I mean, yeah, it was a pretty traumatic experience. But yeah, it was my white corpuscles got overactive.
Yeah.
And they just wanted to eat everything in sight. They're like, "Hey, those blood platelets look pretty good." So my blood platelet count got so low, I should have been alive. So I thought, well, hey, these guys got nothing to lose. Let's use them as a guinea pig. So they shot me so full of cortisone, it bloated me up like a balloon. That's why they couldn't ever find a vein because my hand, everything was just so swollen. And but after a year later, I walked out of the hospital, and my parents were bringing me my schoolwork, so I was being tortured with homework. But I didn't get held back a year, so I was glad.
Well,
of that,
good,
so.
good for that. Did you go through any bullying for being a comics reader or being because you were a science fiction kid too?
Yeah, I was probably a bully before I got sick, and then after I got sick, I just didn't want to hurt anybody. After you're the sickest kid in the world. I mean, I got moved up to be from isolation. I mean, I was so isolated. I had a wall that was glass wall right behind the nurse's station, and so then I got moved up to the critical ward, and all the friends you make, none of them live. I mean, you're supposed to be the sickest kid in the room. Everybody else keeps dying, and you're still hanging on because you're getting all the favoritism. You get the antique wheelchair, you get the TV, you got the bed by the window. So you can tell they're playing favorites with you because they don't figure you're going to be around too long. But I think a lot of it was attitude. I remember one time, and doctors would never do something like this nowadays. One time the doctor walked into the ward, and he's got a needle in each hand, held up, points up, kind of like Wolverine, going, "Who wants these?" Well, all the other kids are screaming, hiding under the sheets, and I'm thinking, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the odds? I'll take them. You got them. Well, at least I didn't wimp out. But I think attitude is why I made it through. But again, they said I would never make 30, and I've more than doubled that up now. The good benefit of it, though, is I don't hardly ever get sick. I don't say I never get sick, but I rarely get sick. I don't bruise at all. At the time when I went in, they couldn't find a spot on my body because my corpuscles was reading on my blood platelets. They couldn't find a spot on my body where they could put a dime that wasn't bruised. Now I don't bruise at all. I had a tree fall on my car, crush me. 7 broken vertebrae, 4 of them in my neck, snapped my ribs in 2, it snapped my sternum in 2. Not a single bruise.
Well, there goes my Weapon X experiment theory. You did have bones break, so.
Oh yeah, my bones will break. Yeah.
All right. Well, the reason I bring that up, though, the bullying aspect is it's usually something that we expect to go away in comics when we get older, when we become adults, and all the time I'm reminded that it hasn't gone away yet. We've had I don't know if we've had her on the LCS Guys show or not. If not, we should rectify that. Irene Strakowski was an artist for Marvel. She did Silk. She did the inks on Silk. She did some other books for them. And then she went off and did her own crowdfunded book called Fiendish, which very manga influenced. It's a perfect bound book, not hardcover, but perfect bound in black and white. Recent one was in color. And she closed out the stream recently. The campaign was finished, finito, it's over. And she did it on Ethan Van Skyver's stream because he does that for a lot of people. He's like, we'll close it out on mine or we'll open it on mine. because he's got a lot of viewers. And I want to say it was within 24 hours, maybe 48, a former Marvel editor, who's now an editor at IDW, was posting publicly that it was so heartbreaking to see someone that they considered a friend align themselves with toxicity and fandom toxicity. And it's like, who are you talking about? What's going on? And it finally came out that she was referring to, Irene going on EVS's stream for her book.
Funny how the people who talk most about toxicity are the ones throwing out the toxicity.
Yeah. And, it's like, and all the people who responded to her, supporting her, by the way, were other comics professionals who are currently working in the industry, saying, yeah, it's a shame to see, somebody go that way. And I'm like, all she did was make her own book and do it on a stream of somebody that you don't like. And of course, everybody knows it. Yes. Okay, let's just get it out there. It was heartbreaking to her, to Heather Antos, because that's the editor. She's an editor who's hopped from here to there. Left comics, went to esports, came back to comics, went to IDW now, and Rainey pretty much let her have it. She's like, if you were my friend, you'd have been helping me on this campaign, or you'd have said something, to support me way back when. So don't come in and tell me now that I've hurt your feelings because I made money and I associate with somebody you don't like.
I don't think you should ever tell somebody you can't associate that person because I don't like them. That's more a reflection on you than it is either the other people.
Yeah, I think there's even something in the Constitution about this freedom to associate thing. But it was just really telling that there's still this bullying trend going on inside of comics. I mean, it used to be outside of comics, in on the fans. Like, oh, look at the geek with the comic book. Let's beat him up. He ain't Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's, if you don't align correctly with the way we think, well, then we're going to harangue you until you do, or ostracize you forever. So yeah, she apparently isn't going to be able to have a career with the big two, creating IPs that she won't own and making far less than she did on the project that she just finished.
This goes back a long ways. Remember when Frank Frazetta worked for Little Abner, and the very well-known creator of Little Abner, when Frank quit, well, he kind of blackballed him and made it where he couldn't find work. So Frank, couldn't get any more comic book work, so then he just started doing some things called paintings, and just blew it up. I mean, so that was like, oh yeah, you really hurt me bad there, pal. But he did hurt him for a while, but Frank found a workaround.
Yeah, well, success is the best revenge.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that everybody's figuring that out in crowdfunding, especially the people who've left the mainstream and have gone out to do it on their own, and in doing so are free to express what they really feel about this or that, whether it's politics or religion or anything.
None of the uni mind.
Yeah, not part of the hive anymore.
Right.
So good on Renee. We're going to have her on the show as quick as we can here to promote her next book, Fiendish #2. And we're talking about another project with her as well.
It's okay to disagree with people, but man, when you start ostracizing people because you don't like them talking to somebody else that you disagreed with, I mean, there's people I'll disagree with, but hey, if there's other things we might agree on. So I'm never going to disown a person because I disagreed with them on something. I mean, if you're making your world really small, it's like they don't agree with you 100% on everything. Wow, you really want to live in isolation.
Well, and then, it's not just that you're ostracizing that person, but then you're getting everybody else that say, hey, be sure to, don't sit with this person at the lunch table. They've got cooties.
That's a perfect example why the United States is a democratic republic. It protects the individual from the mob rule of the majority. And, people can't gang up on and say, hey, RJ's got a bicycle we want. Let's go take his bicycle away. Yeah, we all agree. We want RJ's bike. All right, we're taking it away from him. We're like, no, this is a democratic problem. RJ has the rights of an individual to be an individual, and he can keep his blankety blank bike.
That's right. Since we are ostensibly here to talk about comics and what's going on in the comic book industry, we do have a question from the chat. That James Hayes put this out here before we even went live. Look at that, 6:57. He put this up. We didn't go live till 7:00, and we even had commercials to run. He goes, hello, RJ, your guest, and everyone joining the live chat. I hope that you're having a great night. I am curious what you think about the big plunge in DC sales outside of the Batman line, of course, because Batman is almost everything that DC publishes now. So we be looking at Superman, Wonder Woman.
That's a completely self-inflicted wound. I mean, they don't. Everything's filler now. I mean, they don't make ongoing series anymore. You name just a few of them. You got Wonder Woman. You got Green Lantern. Flash. And I can't think of a whole lot more beyond that. I mean, they don't make regular ongoing series anymore. Everything's mini series here, or one shots there, or specials here, and you don't have the time to build a readership.
Yeah, and they're doing so many gimmicks now. I mean, we went through Dark Knight's metal, and then we went through, I forget what the next metal thing was, but they had to do more metal because they thought it was a really cool concept. I guess the metal book sold well. I don't know.
Moderately,
but at least they were having an impact on the main universe. You had things happening in the ongoing titles that were related to the Dark Knight's metal thing.
Yeah, there was some interest in it initially, but it just kind of whittled away at the end.
And now, of course, we've got Dark Crisis happening, and what have they done? They had the death of the Justice League. I saw them die. saw bodies whittle away. They became skeletons, and then they became dust, and then they were gone. Just like that the way George Perez drew the Flash death in that Crisis on Infinite Earths, that regression team there. And even then, I'm looking at it's not going to stick. It's not. You can't kill these people. And in fact, it's such a joke that this week when they came out with The Road to Dark Crisis, which was a Justice League book. This is Jonathan Kent and Nightwing, who've never been partners. Jonathan Kent was always partners with Damian Wayne because they were both 10, and then Jonathan got shot up to being a young adult, so I guess he's got to hang around with the young adult Batman partner now. But they're all smiles in the artwork that I've seen, talking about the funeral. Hey, we're going to the funeral. You're gonna speak there? Yeah, I'm gonna talk.
Wow.
But they even make a point of saying, yeah, Superman's died before. He'll come back. Yeah, Batman's even died before a couple of times. It never sticks. So even the characters in DC don't care.
Yeah.
But
yeah, everybody's blasé about it. Nobody cares. They're like, yeah, right. Tell us something we'll actually believe. I mean, they've just pulled the switch on too many times. You can't go to the well over and over again and expect to have any kind of impact. I mean, it's no big deal anymore.
Yeah. Now, Robert Roberts is talking about how they make so many Batman things, and it is a logical thing. If Batman is selling more than anything else, make more Batman. McDonald's sells more hamburgers than they do chicken sandwiches, so what do they got? 17 different varieties of hamburgers and a chicken sandwich. I'm
but
sure
all Batman do not sell alike.
No, they don't. But all Batman probably do sell more than Wonder Woman or Superman.
Well, not all Bat titles do. No, I mean, you got an ongoing regular series that's right behind like the Batman and Detective, and then you got Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash. And then the Batman's right down with all these other little offshoot Batmans. I've got some. I'm only down to a couple people will buy them. I mean, you can't just keep Batman after Batman. And nobody cares. It's like the I Am Batman. I got maybe 2 or 3 people who buy that. Sometimes it's not Batman anymore. Or the Fortress. There's been no interest in the Fortress. I think I got one guy who wants that. So I mean, you keep making all the different Batman books you want. People want the core Batman. They want an ongoing series. You have to sell them on trying to start these new series. And the days are long gone where there's a guy who says, I'll take any Batman there is. I don't have any. Yeah. Even my most diehard Batman fans are like, nah, I've had enough of this nonsense. I'll just take this one and this one. I'll let you know if there's any others.
Well, see, with the I Am Batman, they've got a different character in the costume.
Right.
And it's not selling. And they've had different people in the costume before that did sell, but you had no choice then.
Right. It was in the main story. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When Bruce Wayne had his back broken, you had to sit there and read Azrael as Batman because there was no other Batman to read. When he was dead after Final Crisis, going through time, and Richard Grayson became Batman, you had to read Richard Grayson as Batman. They didn't have the options. Now that they've said it's an alternate. Well, if it's an alternate, I don't care.
Whenever you do the alternate, sales drop. I remember when this gives you an idea how long I've been doing this. When the Justice League, the original series of Justice League, They eventually canceled it, but before they canceled it, hey, let's just switch them all up. Let's get rid of all the guys like Batman, Superman. We're going to have Gypsy, and I don't even remember any of the other characters. Nobody
There was
cared. They all
Gypsy.
disappeared afterwards.
Oh, the core characters were Aquaman, Martian Manhunter, Zatanna, and then they had Vixen, Gypsy, Commander Steel, and Vibe. What you talking about? Vibe? Yeah, you got to know what the vibe is. God, they wrote his patois phonetically. So it was.
Yeah, it died on the vine. And so they, let's just cancel the thing. And that was the first time they did that, and then relaunched it and went back to the main core. And I don't know if they've ever tried to say, okay, let's just replace them all. That was almost as bad as I did. I remember when I started this business, one of the top selling books was Legion of Superheroes. And then Keith Giffen wrote a storyline like, hey, guess what? We're not going to use their superhero names anymore. We're going to go with their real names. This is just junk that people made up. I mean, you had Matter Eater Lad was from the planet Bismol, inside joke, Pepto-Bismol, things like that. Yeah. These were never names that meant for them to use. And, so you had all these guys out of costume going by their names, and everybody's like, what? Who is this? The sales plummeted, and the series never, ever recovered.
No, it didn't. I remember that era, and I remember the Legion before that time. It was a glorious era. I really thought that it was going to come back this last time because I really loved the artwork for it. It was so overwritten and so bits and pieces. I was like, oh, look, there's a Gold Lantern, and he's gone. Oh, look, there's this, and he's gone. Where's that story at? Well, we'll get to that, over the next 35 issues. You can piece it all together.
Confusing, convoluted. Just give people what they want. The stories they want to read in a good, clean, concise manner they can follow. Don't make them have to, okay, this story's going to bounce over here. Then you got to buy this other book you never wanted to buy, but you get the whole story. You got to buy that one too. Quit doing with all that nonsense, all the gimmicks. Good story, good art, and let's roll. That's all you got to do.
Absolutely. Tatsu-sama, thank you for joining the chat here, and thank you for the super sticker. Appreciate that. There, that's Swiss francs, 20 Swiss francs that will buy beer, and it's good because this is my last one. I've got to go out. I told myself, okay, I've got my little grocery list tomorrow. Put beer on it. I'm like, it's Sunday. It's Sunday in Northwest Arkansas. You can't buy beer.
Nope, it's against the law.
I found some towns that have it. They changed their town law to allow them to do it. So
I'll tell you what. Everybody thinks I'm semi-retired since I closed my stores and I'm selling mail order. But I've got all these writing contracts to do. I don't even have time to drink a beer in a while. The last beer, I still got beer in my refrigerator from the Super Bowl that the Chiefs won.
That's a long time back, man.
It's so out of date. It might burn up the pipes in my drain if I pour it out. I don't know.
This is my one beer of the day. I reserve it for when I'm on stream so I can just kind of kick back and relax a little bit and talk about the comics. They are rebuilding, like you said, when they rebuild the Justice League with no-name characters, it doesn't work as well. And that's kind of what they're doing now. I mean, they're not no-name characters, but they're just not the characters that we remember. They're trying to bring in the new Wonder Woman. They're trying to bring in the new Batman. They've got an alternate Flash. They're bringing in Aquaman, but it's not Aquaman. It's one of the Aquamen. It's the second Aqua lad that got promoted to Aquaman. There's all kinds of things like, do you realize that like 98% of the new Justice League is either non-binary or genderqueer, or they're just like, yeah, I know. It's
not going to work.
It's what they voted on. I mean, JLQ was a DC does this online thing called a round robin where they have, hey, we've got all these titles we're thinking about doing, and here's the name of the book, and here's the synopsis. And then they'll pit them together like they're in an NCAA tournament bracket and say, vote, which ones are going to come out of this bracket and move forward. And it doesn't matter. They're going to do what they want. JLQ got soundly defeated, and it still came out. They need a female. They will not have a female Amber character in Justice League. She lost. She can't be in the Justice League now. That was a big thing this week too. That trial. You've been busy. You don't get on the internet to follow silliness like the Johnny Depp trial.
I saw the articles on BBC America, and I hate to say it, they are very pro Amber in BBC America. They're like, because over there he lost. They're
Yeah.
like all these Americans. They had a jury, and you could con the jury. And I was like, listen, it was two toxic people. I think Amber was the more toxic of the two. I mean, she reminded me a lot of my ex-wife, so I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, I kept having flashbacks. I don't need to see any more of this. I've been there, done that. Don't want it again.
But yeah, Robert, that would be a million seller because she does have her fans that would pop in and buy it. Come on, DC, make what people want to buy.
Hey, I don't care what it is. It's like I told you how I would carry Trump comics, Barack Obama comics. I mean,
Oh yeah,
or AOC comics. I didn't care. Whoever I forget who the girl was, the governor, Sarah Palin. I carried the comics by them all. I didn't care if it was right to the left, the middle, the top, of the bottom.
because there's a market
If
for
someone
it.
wanted it, it was my job to get it for them. That's the way I always looked at it. And
Yeah.
some of the stuff they're trying to push now, I don't have the audience for. I guess maybe Mid America is just such a different part of the world compared to wherever these guys are getting their feedback from. But it's not Mid America.
Well, there's a huge difference between saying, hey, here's a comic book where we're promoting and or making fun of this political figure, and saying, hey, here's a Batman comic, and here's a real example of it. Here's a Batman comic where he stops to look down at a BLM Antifa riot and says, not my problem, and keeps going. And that happened in, now it wasn't a literal BLM Antifa riot, but it was very reminiscent of it. That happened in Batman the Vault this past week or so, because there's like a busload of kids has a problem. He's going after that. Meanwhile, for whatever the invasion or whatever it is that's causing all the panic, he stops on a rooftop and looks down, and he's seeing these people bust up small businesses and run out with televisions, and he gives an internal monologue speech about, these places are insured. This is not why I got into this business. He's like, these poor people, they've been told all their lives with carrot and stick, that the American dream is literally the American dream he used. Back in my father's day, the American dream meant something. Now it's a carrot and a stick to get these people to spend money on things. And it's like, and who can blame them for when the world turns upside down for grabbing the stick and beating people with it? I have better things to do. Like, one, if there's a busload of kids in trouble, yeah, Batman probably would pass a street riot and go after the busload of kids. But he wouldn't stop and say, I'm going to give a speech about why I'm not going to stop these people.
Those business owners deserve to be robbed because they're business owners. I've actually had customers send me nasty letters saying, well, I'm not going to shop with you anymore because you're an employer. And so you treat your employees like slaves. I had my employees read it. They're like, they got mad at the guy. They're like, man, we need to have a talk with that guy. I was like, yeah, he ain't coming back here anymore. And, that, if you're in business, you're just a part of all the problems of the world and this and that. Like, they don't realize, you're a business owner. You're the last guy in line. Everybody gets paid before you do. And, it just, all the shoplifters, all the things that happen, that comes, it's like you're being mugged every day by all the people who do give you the death of 1,000 cuts and then be told that you're the problem. No.
Well, they did the same thing with landlords. They didn't think that during the pandemic, they didn't think that people should own houses and then be able to rent them out for money. You can let people live in them. Yes, by all means, let us live there. But you own the house. Why should you, be collecting money on it?
Yeah, I mean, you go ahead and pay the taxes, pay the mortgage, but let somebody live there for free. The math just isn't there. I mean, what is going on? The other guy's always rich and they owe it. They owe you a free ride. No, that's not America. That's not the American dream.
Yeah. Robert says I don't know what the Cunard is, but those businesses have insurance. 99% of insurance doesn't cover civil insurrection. So yeah, when there's that kind of a thing, and that's why during the riots that we did have, most of those businesses didn't come back.
Right.
So
yeah,
they just stayed closed.
At the end, before I closed my store, I had employees who didn't want to come in because it was happening down here. Me being on the a public figure, part of the city administration, I had people driving by my house at night and spotlighting it because to figure out who they're going to go after next. And so my neighbors were all worried. You need to call the cops. I'm like, no, not yet. And I never did. But so I was kind of being targeted. It never happened. But the fear tactics and the terror, and it scared. I had employees that scared to come to work. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, just it's nonsense. But you know, it's just mob rule. Again, we're a democratic republic. We're not the rule of the mob. Hey, let's lynch this person because we don't like him. I don't know the story, but there was a good story once written about you know, if everybody got mad at this guy, sure he did a crime. It was all the temperatures getting hot and everybody's you know, anger is going up as the temperature is going up. So he lynched the guy. And then as they're watching, yeah, I'm all proud that they hung this guy. Then the rains came, kind of cooled them down. They relaxed. All of a sudden, they realized, you know, man, we're overreacted a little bit here.
Yeah.
That's America
Well,
right now.
for one thing, too, you know, the Batman that I grew up reading would have passed by that riot, but he stopped and said, people are going crazy. They're robbing. They're looting. I take a moment to memorize their faces. I'll visit them later. That's what Batman would
I'll
have
take
done.
care of this, and I'll come back and see what I can do.
Yeah. And also kind of struck me that he was talking about how these people were, you know, being underemployed or taken advantage of. I'm like, Bruce Wayne employs most of the town. So you're preaching to yourself there, sir.
Yeah, you know, this whole unemployment stuff, that's nonsense. I mean, it's like I can't talk any kind of details about this because I signed a thing of confidentiality, but I was kind of involved on the you know, hiring of a new captain on the police force, and you know, I don't want to go any more of that. But at lunch break, you know, I was sitting around listening to all these guys who do all the hiring for all these different police forces in the area and different counties and like that, and they're all talking about how, yeah, I remember we'd have it open, we get 150 applications. Now we get 4, and you know, nobody wants to apply for a job anymore. I was having the same thing happening when I was trying to decide if I'm going to try to keep my stores open. When all my all my employees got scared when Diamond said we're shutting it all down. They're like, oh my God, we better go find other jobs. And all these people would send me an application, you know, as a part of their got to keep my unemployment benefits going. I got to act like I'm looking for a job. Not one person, not even one, showed up for an interview. And so, yeah, there's just people don't want to work. They want to act like, oh, it's so hard, or they don't pay enough. And but you know, people don't want to work for fair money for fair wage. I mean, and the whole thing, you get entry level wages too. When you come into a job, prove yourself, and then the good people will get raises. You get incentives, and you know. And I remember all the time when I was in the workforce, and everybody kept asking me, well, how are you getting all these job opportunities? How are you getting all these raises? And stuff? Well, they keep offering them to me because I got in and I worked my butt off. Everybody else is kind of doing the easiest thing they could do, try to just enough to get by. And then they were, well, what's your trick? What are you doing? I'm working my butt off, you know. They just didn't seem to understand.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. Oh, you got lucky then. There's no luck.
Yeah, I got lucky. You
Yeah.
make your own luck in this business, in every business. God, where was I going to go next? I can't remember. It had something to do with comic books, obviously. But, well, I'll go ahead and ask the question we always ask, and that's, you know, what are people asking for?
Well, you know, I'm starting to get, you know, my orders in for the next month. It's kind of difficult though because I've got a Diamond POS system called Comic Suite, and they have never played well with whoever the people are distributing, you know, Diamond, you know, other than Diamond, you know, the DC comics. Now it's
Sure.
Lunar, and you know, this catalog's still not available to start posting orders for this month's DC's in. So I'm getting a lot of requests on different books there, and yeah, just. You know, the Marvel, I'm starting to see people want to buy more books now, though. I mean, they're starting to add orders and this and that. But it's ongoing series. It's not so much the one-shots or the mini-series. People just, you know, don't care. You know, that'll pass right over my head. And, you know, people want ongoing series. Something that's been around for a while, something that's going to be around for a while. It's a real simple formula right now. They just don't play the games anymore. And it was the same way when I still had my stores. It was so tough to buy on the shelves because I had to gamble against all those things. And that's why I'm actually, you know, with a much smaller volume, I'm actually doing better financially because I'm not having to gamble on all those misses. Like, oh, this is going to be the next best thing since sliced bread. And I'm like, yeah, nobody wants to eat that flavor.
Yeah, it's there. Knowing that there's a longevity to it, that works in more than just comics. I mean, you know,
Reliability.
Yeah, exactly. You know, where do you want to get your who do you want to put your roof on? Do you want the guy who just, you know, opened up last week, or the people who've been in business for 40 years? That's what you look to.
Yeah, and you know, the whole thing, if they want to create new characters, I mean, you got to be dedicated to it. You know, nowadays I put it out, oh, it didn't, you know, break any sales records in the first 2 or 3 issues. Oh, let's pull the plug on it. That's not how you build something. It's like going all the way back to the 70s. Conan the Barbarian. They were like, man, what are we going to do about Conan? The sales go down every issue since the #1, which is typical, until it builds the audience. Number 7, the sales had gotten so bad, they're like, all right, let's do a team up with Thor. Well, then number 8, the sales started climbing. And eventually that became one of their top selling titles. So the only time they did a team up with Thor was, let's do a what if and we'll team them together. It never happened in the actual series. So it was given enough time, but it was almost pulled the plug. Nowadays, there's no book going to get 7, 8 issues to find its legs.
Well, but the team up, even though it didn't happen in the continuity, it introduced the character to readers of the other of their books. The Thor readers were like, well, I'm going to buy a Thor book. I don't know who this Conan character is. Oh, he's got his own series. He's kind of cool.
Yeah, and that's
and
a good
Marvel
way
was
to
good
do
at
it.
that.
And you're not forcing them to buy because it's not part of continuity. But that was a series they had of team ups. We'll put the characters together that normally would not be the what ifs. Those were fun. And it's amazing how many what if stories ended up being. Oh, hey, guess what our new storyline is going to be?
Yeah, exactly. The what ifs sort of became showcase.
Yeah, it really did. Like, all right, this one really sold well. That's our story for next year.
Yeah. Now, Marvel and I want to say DC as well. They used to do that a lot, where they'd have a new character and a new book, and before that character hit his 4th issue, he would show up in Superman or Batman or one of the main titles, or vice versa. Superman or Batman would show up in his title to get people to come in and cross the cross promotion to get people to know about the character.
And that's fine. What you don't want to do is make people who buy Batman, to get to the next chapter story. Now you must go over and buy Johnny Bugle or whatever. Just some character you never heard of, you never will be interested in. And that's when people start dropping out. It's like I don't care. Guess what? I think maybe I'm done. They just don't give reason to people to stop buying comics. Don't try to force them to buy things they don't want to, because eventually that's going to lead to I don't care anymore.
And I guess a lot of people finally got that way after pandemic, because they went weeks and weeks and weeks without reading comics.
I had a lot of people who said that, and when they started coming back, they're like, I'm just not into them anymore. I just don't like the type of stories they're telling anymore. Amazingly, the art I think is the best it's ever been, but people aren't connected with the stories anymore. I mean, they're just not telling people the stories they want to read, and they're hiring writers. They're hiring guys who don't even pitch to write a book. Like, hey, you're some new guy that we think would be great on the series, so start writing this, and they don't know a thing about it. Then they'll start reading all the more recent issues and come up with a story that's a rehash of what's already been told. And older readers like myself are like, man, I've read this so many times before, I don't care to read it anymore.
Oh, it was it's interesting that you say that, because I was like, you remember they stopped Batman, and then they did the New 52, and then they stopped Batman, and they did Rebirth. So Batman's like in the 3rd volume now, renumbered from number 1. And I was putting my comics away, and I was getting to like same numbers of different volumes of the last 2 volumes. I was like, I could not tell. I had to open them up and get the microscope out to see which one was which, because the covers were like, I want to say it was like 47 or something, but it was not. It was something further down. Batman fighting the Joker. And they were just following the same path on things. Like, it's either been a really long story, or they just went and told it again, and they just went and told it again is what it was.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've read that before. You want something new. You want something fresh, exciting. Give me a new twist. Not just, okay, well, now we're going to kill this person. We're going to shoot that person. Just go for the shock value. Shock value is just very shallow.
Yeah, and it's first of all, it's short term. Second of all, no one buys it anymore. It's just like, yeah, he ain't dead. He's coming back.
The shock's done. Yeah, we're going to kill this character. Oh, yeah, they'll get better next week.
Yeah, you'll be fine. He'll get better. James, this one's probably more for me than Michael, because I don't know that Michael's all hip on what Comicsgate is. Comicsgate is the crowdfunded movement that is people who got away from the mainstream because they got tired of not political books. Because, like I said, the Trump books and AOC books, those are political books and they sell. They got tired of Captain America and Batman turning towards the front of the panel and spouting the creator's political agenda. And having these creators use these known characters as a megaphone. So Comicsgate was formed on a lot of fronts simultaneously, but most people know that Ethan Van Skyver left DC Comics because the persecution there was just too much, and his co-workers were turning against him because he was a vocal Trump supporter. He wasn't just like, I'm going to go vote for Trump and not tell anybody. He was like all excited about it. So that was one of the main things.
I don't care if you're for Biden or if you're for Trump, you're entitled to your opinion, and you should embrace that. You should never be scared if somebody has a different opinion. How are you going to grow, and how can you have an actual meaningful discussion if you're not willing to listen to somebody who challenges your viewpoint? It all comes down to in politics is we all think of what will work best for us as an individual, and so that's where we're all coming from. That doesn't mean anybody's wrong or anybody's right. It's just all what's best for you, and you got to entitle everybody to have their own opinion. I've never understood that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of Comicsgate independent books being made on the crowdfunded market now, and you'll have people like Ethan Van Skyver. You'll have people like Mike Barron. I know all these names, and suddenly I'm blanking on them, and I've only had half a beer, so I shouldn't be. Graham Nolan, people like that. Chuck Dixon. Lately, Dale Keown, the guy who was drawn Hulk and Pitt for so long, he's bringing Pitt to Comicsgate. So all these people are Comicsgate. Yeah, and he's relaunching Pitt. So, and that's if you say Comicsgate to any of the comics professionals these days, that's the thing that will trigger some vitriol, and that's what triggers their antics.
You have to be to the left. You cannot have any leanings to the right.
Exactly. You cannot join with this toxic male. Apparently, because apparently they're anti this, and anti that, and they're made up of this, and that. So it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to be, a white supremacist group when you've got people of color working side by side with you, and it's hard to be, homophobic when you've got gay people and lesbian people on the team making comics and all happy, holding hands and just kumbaya. But keep the story up. Keep people believing it. Anyway. What James is asking is, do you think Comicsgate indie books have a place on the shelf at modern comic shops, and how can we make that happen for creators? James, I'm so glad you asked that question, because as a fulfillment service at Critical Blast Logistics, we've worked with Comicsgate books and non-Comicsgate books, just basically crowdfunded books in general. Both face the same hurdles to getting into mainstream comic stores. One of the things I tell people is to overship their books to me when I'm fulfilling, so that not only can I, have something on hand in case something comes back damaged or something got lost in the mail, because it happens. Once they leave my hands, I can't babysit them from the door to your door. But additionally, I want the overstock because we are compiling a catalog to send out to comic book stores and say, hey, these are the books we have on hand. These were crowdfunded books. You're not going to get them anywhere else because they're not out there at Lunar or at Diamond or anywhere else. Which ones do you want and how many? And we've already done this once. I took some pictures. I put them on my Twitter timeline. Maybe I'll refresh those again, where we took a number of books who were a mix of Comicsgate and not Comicsgate. Well, I'll say this, mix of Comicsgate, and I don't know whether they were Comicsgate or not, because some people just don't fly the flag loudly. They're just working and putting out books. So yes, they've already been on shelves. We want to make that happen on a bigger scale, and it can happen. You need a distributor who's going to carry them, and I am that distributor. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about what we do. one of the many things. To be cynical, how long do you think the new CG or Mandy Summers will last before some of the 50-year-old dudes creep around her? Well, Mandy's not new. Mandy's been on this particular program, and it's been on several of our other shows as well. So she's been around for 3 years. Creep on her. Mandy's attractive. So yeah, some of the older dudes are probably going to say things. Whether they're going to do things, I don't know. I don't know these guys' morality. That'll hopefully, if somebody look, Mandy's a big girl. She's got big girl panties on. If somebody creeps on her and she likes it, she'll say, yeah, come over and have a beer, or she'll shut him down. She's very capable of taking care of herself. And yeah, she's already had to deal with that on some levels. And I bet, that, young female professionals in any profession, let alone Comicsgate and comics in general, deal with that on an everyday basis. And, it's horrible, but hopefully, they stand up for themselves and get supported when they say it happened. So, Mandy tells me that somebody's creeping on her and she doesn't like it, I'm supporting Mandy. So
yeah, we're come on, we're all supposed to be adults here. Let's act like it.
Yeah.
I had to be like the dad a lot of times at my store because I had a lot of young women working for me, and I couldn't tell you how many times I had to have the conversation. Look, it's not that she likes you. That's not why she smiled. She's friendly and she's doing her job. That doesn't mean she's got a thing for you. And I'd have people get all mad, upset at me. Swear they'll never shop with me again. That's fine. You're just I'm not running a Bravo here. This is a place of business. These are women who are just doing their job. And just because you're never around another woman in your life doesn't mean, oh, okay, she smiled, said thank you, have a nice day. That doesn't mean she said, hey, let's go hop in the sack. And, I had to play the dad so many times. Now, when I had character appearances at my store, She-Hulk and Catwoman, I had some pretty bad creeps I had to chase off with She-Hulk, and so when I had Catwoman there, I just had an off-duty cop in uniform. Well, I took care of that. I didn't have any problems when I had him sitting there.
Definitely.
Right up front.
Yeah, James, thank you for reminding me. I knew that something had happened, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I didn't want to throw something out that wasn't correct. Rini, who we talked about at the beginning of the stream, another attractive and vivacious female in comics. Mike, if we do a stream with Rini, you're going to come away feeling energized and optimistic and happy because she's just that much of a ball of energy. And one of her stream panelists who she had on the show took her being friendly online too seriously and showed up at her house. Not cool.
No.
Not cool. That's when, look, this is the thing where you say, hey, I'm going to be in your town on such a day. Would you like to go to Applebee's? I'll meet you there. and then she can say, no, I'm busy, or yes, I'll be there.
I remember one time I was at a grocery store. And there's a very lovely girl who's working at the register. And this was the last time I saw her working there. And all of a sudden, the guy in front of me rings up and goes out. And she's just all shaking. She's freaked out. When I'm next, I'm like, what's the matter? What happened? And this guy gave her a pair of diamond earrings for her birthday. I guess he heard it was her birthday. And she's like, man, he's a freak. And I said, listen, I have that happen in my stores all the time where guys, you just try to be nice to them. They go from step 1 to step 4. They're like, oh, this will impress her. Oh, this will even impress her more. And next thing you know, they're all the way to creep out status. I mean, they forget that you go through stages. Hi, how are you doing? Hey, can we grab a drink sometime? Can I buy you dinner? Not like, okay, hey, I'm at your house. I brought change of clothes for tomorrow morning. You go through a few steps before you get to that point.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you draw. I love the way you draw. How do you like your eggs? Just a bit of
got no sense and no couth.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, how did we get here? The chat. Chat should give us more talking subjects more often. This is good. I'm scrolling back up because Robert had one about Thor and Conan being complementary. Yeah, fans of one would like fans of the other, and it was smart marketing to say, what do we got that's like Conan? Oh, we've got Thor. Well, let's bring in those Thor fans. 14-year-old boys reading Thor don't want to read about Thor's girlfriend. 16, maybe 8 to 14 want no girl stuff. We're still all little
phase. I never had that don't like girls. I always like girls. I was like, I never understood my friends like, oh, I don't like girls. Like, what's wrong with you?
I was Mr. Yanafu, you come to my house to show me your little pen? Okay. You can. Mr. Yanafu is a friend of the channel. He makes some excellent videos. Most of them very funny about people within the crowdfunding community, and I've been in one of them, so I've made it. I was the same way though. I was like, I was very, very young when Yvonne Craig in bat tights caught my attention, and I never had a problem with girls in comics. But I was reading everything, Mike. I was reading the Superman and the Batman, and then I'd read Katie Keene. I'd read Katie Keene first because I didn't want to read Katie Keene last. I don't want to end my reading experience with this fashion model story.
With a bunch of pinups.
I'd read it, I'd enjoy it, I'd get it out of the way and move on to something else. Hey, Mike Walters, good to see you in the chat, man. Appreciate you being here. We'll see you tomorrow on the open topic night. Female. Okay, so how are female comic characters selling then?
If it's a well written story, interesting character, it'll do well. If it's not, if it has no time to build an audience, it's not going to sell. I mean, I'm trying to think. I remember She-Hulk got really doing well there back when John Byrne was writing her and drawing her.
Yeah.
Not so much since, not so much before, not so much after. You get a good creative person on there, tell some good stories. It makes it interesting. It's going to sell. It's like any other character. It doesn't matter what the character is. How good is the story, and how interesting can you make the character be? I remember, just take almost an androgynous type of character, Man Thing. Doesn't sound very androgynous, but there's just this Hulk walking around of green in the swamp. It was a terrible seller, Swamp Thing for DC. I mean, it was really good at first when you had, I forget who the writer was, but you had Bernie Wrightson drawing him. Oh, that was great stuff.
Yeah.
It was sold for the art. It was fantastic.
Len Wein was writing it.
Oh yeah, Lin, that's right. And but then when they left, then I'm sure these other guys were good craftsmen and good storytellers, but it just didn't have the connection anymore. It just wasn't selling worth a darn. And then all of a sudden, here comes Alan Moore. Hey, let's do a new take on it. And he just completely reinvented the character, and that ended up being like a top-selling book until Moore left the book. I mean, so you get a good writer who's got a good take on something, tells a good story, then you can take any character and make it into a top-selling character.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up She-Hulk because, of course, she's got the Disney Plus series coming up now, and she for a while looked like the Hulk and acted like the Hulk, and no one ever understood why. And then I believe it was in Avengers where you're like suddenly seeing her thought balloons, and her thought balloons were perfect English, but then she would, and you found out she was doing it on purpose. She wanted to look ugly. So she would think, oh, the Avengers are over in the other room here. Look, they're getting in the pool. That would be nice. I'd like to get in the pool. Pools feel good. And she just going to say, Hulk ready pool. So it was weird that she was doing it on purpose, but now she's back to being the lovely Jen Walters that we grew up with in the John Byrne era.
Who can do legal arguments in court.
Who can do legal arguments in court? Yes. Good Lord.
Plaintiff bad. Defendant good. Yeah, that wouldn't fly too well in court. Judge
Definitely not.
Smash. What do you mean contempt of court?
James says, every time I hear about older Conan comics, I can't help but think about how much I miss painting in comic panels and books. Are there any up-and-comers in that regard, like Frank Frazetta and Boris Vallejo? Gosh, the only one I can think of off the top of my head is always Alex Ross. I don't know if anybody's come in after him. His Astro City obviously was very, very painted all the way through.
The guy I'm seeing sell a lot of, who does kind of painted like covers in back issue, has strong sales, is Del Otto. He's seeing strong demand in sales.
Who's that?
Del Otto.
Okay.
Lllotto. Got a gap in between. Yeah.
And what's his books?
Really good demand on his work.
Where are you seeing his work at?
He did a lot of Spider-Man covers. He does superhero painted art for Marvel, and I've seen a lot of demand on this stuff. All of a sudden, it just all started bombing, and when I say bombing, it's blowing up on my online sales. And just everything I put up on my eBay store is just all selling. I mean, I sold some of his covers for over $100. Some of his variants. Wow. Yeah, so there's strong demand.
Okay. Yeah, there is Shanthan Jetty in the comics community. Also, you'll find Preston Acevedo doing a lot of painted covers and such within the crowdfunding area. So there are painters out there. It's
usually tends to be computer generated art like Art Germ and Stanley Lau and other guys like that, where they could really make a beautiful looking painting, like the colorist on Michael Hughes. Or Adam Hughes' artwork, where the colorist on him can really spring his artwork out. And Michael Turner used to have a lot of good colors on him. But painted artwork, I love painted artwork. I mean, I don't know if there'll ever be another Frank Frazetta. There's Frank Frazetta and everybody else who imitated Frank Frazetta. And there's a lot of them.
Julie Bell, Boris Vallejo, they were sort of all up at that same. Olivia. Good. Yeah. I would think you'd have to paint digitally for the interiors of comics, though, because even if you got an 11 by 17 Bristol board to get, to paint on that would be hard to do. It's very, very small areas to work with. And of course, there is Kenneth Rockford. American Comics is also on the Shant Jetty train. He's got a book out called Nospero, which, yes, it's Nosferatu, but with a different title there. So, and they both paint by hand and not computer for every panel of their books. I would love to see one of their streams if they're doing art streams where they're actually painting the panels, just to see how they're doing it, because you want to have a bigger canvas when you work on something. So I'd just love to see if they're like painting a comic book on like a 12 by 18 canvas and then shrinking it down to do that. Michael, you're a painter. How would you handle painting comic book panels?
I haven't ever painted a comic panel. I haven't done any painting in a little while. I want to get back to it. Once I get done with all these writing projects, which I need to tell you about that here in a minute. But I want to try to get back, do maybe some oils or acrylics. Probably oils, a little more freedom. The acrylics are just a little bit more stiffer. But just larger board. Usually you want to work at least 1.5 to 2 times reproduction size.
Yeah. So you would have a big easel, bigger than the 11 by 14 Bristol board kind of thing.
Because then when you shrink it down, it really tightens it all up.
I bet it does. And since you brought it up, you have books that you've been doing covers for.
Yeah, it's like I'm busy, doing my wall stars. I'm still trying to wrap up my Robert E. Howard art chronology, and I'm getting really close on that on the writing part. It's going to end up being like a 500,000 word project, and I don't know how many thousands and thousands of images. I'm going to add it all up when I get done. But it's turned out to be a monster project. But I'm still been keeping my wall stars going and keeping a new wall stars novel coming out every year. The first 4 were all put together in a big omnibus for my 35th anniversary, and then I've continued to write a novel a year after that. The first one after that was called the Atomic Paradigm, and so they ran a Kickstarter on it. And some of these will be available for sale. This is the hardcover version of it. It has a couple bonus stories in them. One, it's the first publication. Another one has been out of print for like about 40-some years. And then it also has another cover that from the magazine on the back in Virgin format. And also it includes some bonus role-playing games. I have such a huge variety of settings and characters. A lot of people like to do role-playing because that was something I was always seeing people say, hey, make these available for role-playing. I have had a role-playing module made, and now having some more new role-playing stuff because I'm always adding new characters. This is the trade paperback where the cover on the back of the hardcover is on the front, and the cover from the front of the hardcover is on the back. So you kind of get it in a version
you flipped them.
And then on top of that, this was the Kickstarter only variant with a Virgin cover done by Dark
I love that one.
And colored by Raven Monroe. And liked it pretty well too. And he was going to run one of these other covers on the back covers. And I said, hey, I want to do a little trick on this because she's like a really powerful psychic girl. So let's just kind of throw a little bit of a lens flare behind her on the back cover. So it's like, what's she up to? So you start this book, and then when you get to the back, like, yeah, she's still doing her witchy ways.
Okay. And that was Dark Philly who's done that. I've seen Dark Philly on Twitter hanging around in the crowd-funded areas.
And this also will feature 2 pieces of new artwork by Dark Philly because it'll have all the illustrations she did for the serialization. And then it'll also have 2 new pieces she did exclusively for this. And I just saw them the other day. She just got them wrapped just barely under the wire. We've been kind of delaying publication of this to get them in there. And she just wrapped them up in a couple good-looking images there. And the Wildstar 6 Part 3 will be shipping here very soon.
And those are all serializing in Cursova magazine, right?
Right, yeah. See, this was the Atomic Paradigm, was book 5. And book 6 is Orphan of the Shadowy Moons. And that's running in Cursova magazine this year. And so it's the third part of that comes out here in 2 weeks. And it's a good jumping on point. It's another kind of like standalone story that's kind of connected to it all. I do a lot of modularly. This one, the Paradigm, it has a fairly standalone story, but this was a little bit more interconnected because this is wrapping up a lot of big storylines building, and this is kind of the Empire Strikes Back of the 12-book series where the bad guys kind of do a lot of damage in this one.
Okay, well that was one of the best movies of that particular genre, so you've set a high bar. You said that the Robert E. Howard art chronology is almost done. Is this going to be bigger than the Edgar Rice Burroughs art chronology?
Yeah, it's going to be the same format, which was giant. Huge art books, and coffee table type. And this one's going to be at the maximum I can make them as far as page count. And so cause, I mean, there was just so much stuff on Robert E. Howard. I mean, he only had like about a 10-year writing career, but I swear, if he wrote down a list of his favorite grocery shopping lists, that would have its own book, a paperback edition, reprinted in 3 languages. I mean, his stuff just got reprinted right and left. Then there's other versions, or this is this guy's finished this unfinished story. Here's another guy's version, finish the story. All right, let's go back to the original Howard text. Let's just, I mean, everything's been published 6 ways to Sunday, and it's all over the place. And so it's been a massive undertaking. I mean, one guy tried to do a compendium of all his appearances called The Never-Ending Story. Just unending quest. And it just or never-ending quest, something like that. And because it's just massive how much stuff is out there. I mean, and so I'm going through. I'm covering all of his appearances, and I'm concentrating on the story in pulps, magazines, and in fanzines, which that was pretty tricky to try to track them down. I don't know if I got them all, but I tried to. And I just on the actual Howard stories, not just people writing about Howard or pretending to be Howard. And then that's volume 1. Volume 2 is going to be all about the books. Hardcovers, paperbacks, anthologies in both the U.S. and the U.K. And boy, some of that stuff is pretty rare. I mean, there's some editions people said, "Oh, it doesn't exist." I managed to track down a copy. That's where me being a bookseller and have a lot of background in purchasing, I can track down things people say that's not real. That doesn't exist. Like I got it. And then volumes 3 and 4 are concentrating on the comics. Volume 3 on the Conan comics, and volume 4 on all the Conan magazines and all the other creations of Robert E. Howard in comics, plus the UK reprints. And that's all there is to it.
I'm looking forward to seeing that one done because the Edgar Rice Burroughs one, that was about a 40-pound brick of a book. And I might be underestimating it there.
It weighed over 15 pounds.
It was a big book.
So it's a lethal weapon in 6 states.
All right. Well, we are going to be doing a crowdfunder starting Monday. We're already in pre-launch, and by the way, the link to Michael's site is below the video. If you hit the wildstars.com link, it will take you to Michael's page where you can find links to all his books. So you can, buy those. You can buy the Robert E. Howard Art Chronology, I still think, on there.
Through I have links to it. Yeah, it's still for sale.
Okay.
Well, no, the Robert E. Howard, I take that. I was thinking Edgar Rice Burroughs. The Robert E. Howard, it was the original Kickstarter offering. Now, once we get those all filled, then we'll open up extra copies that they printed for sale to the general public. So right now you can't buy any more of that. You got to wait until we actually get it released and all the people who invested in the Kickstarter get rewarded, and then everybody else can have another bite at the apple.
Yeah. And then below that, you'll find a link to our pre-launch for The Devil You Know Better, which is our hardcover release. We are going to go live with that Monday. We're going to be doing that on a stream with the CG UK Bargain Bin show because they're in Europe and the time zone works out for me, because we are launching that on 6/6 at 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.
Mark of the beast.
Yes. So we'll be because somebody asked me, it's like, when are you going to go with the live launch? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me look at the calendar. A couple of weeks. Whoa, that's too good to pass up. We're doing it then. And then we'll do on Monday night, our time, where we're in our normal slot, we're going to do a live stream party where we're going to have as many of the contributing authors as possible will be there. So, if you like short horror stories or funny horror stories or science fiction horror stories, just every one of these stories is somebody encountering the devil in one shape or fashion. This crowdfunder is going to be limited. We're going to do 30 days. We might do 30 days after. It will not go in demand. This is going to be a very limited list published hardcover. It's going to be numbered. So it's going to be, you're going to get number 1 of whatever. And the number will probably be your backer number unless, people refund, in which case now there's holes in the list. But they're going to be numbered and delivered in the order of the backing. So earlier backers get lower numbers. So keep that in mind. It will also be signed by Mike Barron and Hart D. Fisher. So if you were into signed books, there's another little bonus for you. We're only going to print to order, and we will, for the sake of the printer, we're probably going to round up. So if we get like 196, I'm going to say, give me 200. We're going to round up to the nearest 10. So we'll have a few left over, but not a lot. Your collectability on this one will continue to Yeah, it's not going to be watered down. It's not going to be diluted. James, can you and Michael introduce potential new readers like me to your books? I would like to know what they are about. Okay, Michael, I don't have a book other than one I just described that I edit. I mean, yes, if you would like to go out and get some of my books that I've already published, I've written some books for The Destroyer, Remo Williams in that universe. They're available on Amazon under my byline. My first book was Alice's Journey Beyond the Moon, which was an Alice in Wonderland third book by Lewis Carroll, or so it was written to be. So you can find that. But, Mike, none of this compares at all to 45, 50 years of history of the Wild Stars. So
Yeah.
take it away.
I do both nonfiction and fiction. The nonfiction is like the Edgar Rice Burroughs Chronology, where I give you the entire artistic history of everybody illustrating and publishing of his books, from pulps to comics. And I'm in the process of doing a Robert E. Howard book the same way. My fiction on the Wild Stars, that's been my main project since I was in junior high. That's when I had my first story accepted for publication. I was trying to sell it, but they just ran it in the fan pages for free and said, "Thanks for the free story." And you're like, wow, they take advantage of kids, don't they? And the concept behind the Wild Stars is that all those stories we've ever heard of UFOs, space gods, that's just been cuz coming back for a visit. That 75,000 years ago, mankind made our first migration into the stars, and that's all our relatives coming back for visits. They create all those legends, and it's kind of strange because it's a story I came up with back in the early '70s, and it really kind of started with when I was watching the first step taken on the moon, going, hey, we go out into space. That's going to be like the Wild West in space. Wild Stars. That's the stories I want to write about. One big, all encompassing story. And that's the concept. That's where Wild Stars came from. And 75,000 years ago, we migrated into space. And Volume 1, it's set like in modern times, where you're having. Basically, they've gotten into an intergalactic war with a genocidal enemy, and that war spread back to Earth. Volume 2, that's when you start introducing the future history story of a couple of 100 years into the future of the Wild Stars. Volume 3 was again set in that time period, where you have will end up being like a future president, kind of a Teddy Roosevelt type of guy. Surviving basically a starship wreck and all sorts of other things going on. Volume 4 is where we finally explain what happened in all the background story of that migration 75,000 years ago, why it happened, what was causing it to happen, and give you a lot more background on this ancient warriors, which we haven't ever gotten a lot of details on. He's so old that he doesn't even remember, and but there's other things going on and why he doesn't remember. Volume 5, that's in Wild Stars 1 introduced these alternate reality fascists called the Atomics. This kind of goes off from the reason why Nostradamus was hard to understand is because he saw two timelines, the alternate reality of the Atomics and our reality. And so he was seeing two different histories, and that's why some of the stuff didn't make sense. Well, these are the bad guys, the Atomics, basically Hitler's alternate reality son crossing over to our time period. And they've been around for a couple hundred years, causing a lot of trouble. And in our atomic paradigm, that's what it is. It's when they kind of take control and take over. And and how they're around for 200 years, that gets explained too. Number 6, that's running right now in Krasova. That's when I finally give you the origin of the ancient warrior, all the background stories and the backgrounds of his other characters. And you're going to, so that's kind of like going all the way back to the beginning, even further back to the beginning of the very, very start, and giving you his origin, his background story. So each one's kind of modular, where you get a self-contained story, but they're all connected into a bigger story. It's planned for 12 volumes, and I was telling the publisher he dropped off these proofs to me today. What the big twist was in 7. And before he was saying, well, if you can't get it done by a certain time, we have to wait another year. And I told him, well, what the big twist was. Okay, well, if you need a little more time, we'll work with you. I got a really good twist coming in 7. Yeah. Each one.
Don't rush it. Don't rush quality.
That's exactly what he said. And, because the story evolves. I keep, you look at something like, wow, he's been setting that all the way back up since the first pages of his comic back in 1984. And so I've had a big plan because I wrote these as novels back in the 70s. And a lot of these things I'd submit to editors, and I'd start seeing my ideas show up other places. Well, I finally got frustrated with that, quit submitting them. And like the one that's running now, Orphan of the Shadowy Moons, that's a novel I first wrote back in 77, 78, did one draft on it and never showed it to anybody. And guess what? It never showed up any other places. And, now some of my crazy ideas back then aren't quite so crazy now. Like you could use a tablet to control giant machines from a distance. There was
Yeah.
no such thing as personal computers that you carry around on a laptop back then. But another thing was basically armies fighting on armorized, weaponized jet skis, and back then there weren't jet skis yet, and so some things have kind of caught up with me, but a lot of the stories are still original. My ideas are original, so I just have a lot of fun. You asked if there's a collected edition. The individual books are available both in hardcover and paperback. The first 4, there's a hardcover edition, an omnibus that has all 4 of them in one thing, and it also includes a multiversal guide of all the names, characters, and places. So if you're like somewhere in the story, like, okay, who was this again? You can look at the back. Okay, this is so and so, and you start getting to a point where you don't know what. I haven't read that part yet. Stop reading because then you're going to get spoilers. And I even had some spoilers for the future coming volumes because I've had this thing planned out. I know exactly how it's going to end. I know what's going to happen in each one of the different volumes. So for me, it's just great to have a publisher who's really enthusiastic about it, wants to publish them, and now I can get the whole story told. And the plan is to do them 1 a year till it's all wrapped up, and this will be my magnus opus, or whatever you call a giant
magnum opus. Yeah.
But yeah, there we go.
But they were all serialized at one point, and then each book has been collected. So each book is a collection. Then you got the omnibus, which is a collection of the 4 collections for the first 4.
Yeah, all 12 of them is one big story. But I try to tell them modular. So you read one, well, you get a whole story. You get a beginning, a middle, and an end. But then you read all the other ones, you get an even bigger story. And it's like the first one, which was collecting all the comics put together, because that started from a novel that I adapted into comics.
It starts out as a graphic novel, and then it moves into a novel, but it's the same story.
Yeah, well, actually, it started out as a novel. Then it was in a graphic novel. Then I just collected all the comics together into a graphic novel. And but I called that one the Book of Circles because it's so multi-layered in backgrounds and details that you can read it again. You'll see a whole other story you didn't see the first time. I had one guy read it 5 times. I could still show him things he missed. And as it goes along, you'll still find, oh, that was in there too. So not everything that was in the background or details have all been revealed yet, because that book 1 just set it all up. And I know some people said it was a challenging read, but it rewarded you for taking the effort to read it.
Yeah, I appreciated the fact that when you're done with the graphic novel and you start the next page, and it's like this is where the novel stuff begins again. The novel begins with end of video record. And you find out that people have been watching this video that has been the graphic novel up until this point.
Right. Yeah. See, the Book of Circles, the first one, that was all basically a collection. There was a telepath in there who's for her group of telepaths. She was creating a visual record, and kind of her Book of Circles of a narrative to describe all these people and this and that. It was research. And then in book 2, there were some comic pages in there that were a video record that was used at a court-martial trial.
Yes. That was for
force majeure. There's a reason why part of it's comic and part of it's text.
All right, no more questions from the chat. It looks like so. I think we've satisfied everybody. That was fun. Why don't you guys do this more often? Because I come in with no agenda ever. We just talk about whatever pops up. So thank you guys. You helped us make a show tonight. I always say we don't have a show without you, and tonight you proved it. Michael, anything else you want to go out with before we end the show tonight?
Buy more Wild Stars. I don't know.
There you go.
Also, that's just my Wild Stars. Those are my big projects. I have lots of other little short stories and miniseries and things like that I've worked on too. So a lot of those have run in Cursova magazine. One of them was where I got to do a posthumous collaboration with Edgar Rice Burroughs and completed an unfinished Tarzan story.
That's right.
Got really high marks and ratings. And that's been serialized, or not serialized, but has appeared in Cursova magazine too, along with some of my other short stories. So, I write a wide range of things. One reviewer made a good compliment. He said, you can't pigeonhole me as a writer because I'll change my style for whatever it is I'm writing.
Yeah, that was an exciting time that you got to do, work with Edgar Rice Burroughs. I mean, there's, I think there's only one other unfinished Burroughs story, wasn't there, that somebody else had finished up?
Yeah, Tarzan, the Lost Adventure.
Okay. So Mike writes a lot of books. So go visit his website, thewildstars.com, link below. Find links to all of his books. You can fill a library shelf, and you might want to support it with another brace underneath it because these are big, heavy books, guys. Mike, thanks for coming on tonight.
Always a pleasure.
I always look forward to it. Glad to have the LCS Guys show on here. Really would like to get LCS Guys back on. We talk about a little bit more industry stuff. Get some get some more open brick and mortar stores back into here and see what's going on. But we'll work on it. We'll find somebody.
4 decades of it, I can tell you about.
This is true. We could, maybe we should do a show on nightmare customers or that might be a series.
The majority of my customers were fantastic. They were friends. But then there was the people who really stood out in the crowd. You're like, wow, I do not miss dealing with those people at all anymore. And there were some people who just, it's the thefts, there's people who just try to manipulate you, rip you off, and just there were some bad things.
We might want to start off
teaching our kids to steal, things like that.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me about that one. We might want to start off with how to open a comic store some night, and just go through the stuff, because you can't just open a store and then wait for the books to arrive. You got to have inventory, and you got to have there's a lot of steps before you open a business.
You got to be set up with the state. You got to have federal ID. You got to be what kind of business are you going to be? Are you going to be a sole proprietor? Are you going to be a C corp, an LC limited corp? Just a lot of different S corp is what I was trying to say. Just so many different things to set up, and how are you going to do your accounting? How are you going to do your payroll taxes? How are you going to do your sales tax reporting every month? I mean, there is a lot to it, and where are you going to rent? This and that. And so my advice in the environment that we have right now, if you're thinking about opening a comic book store, wait till you sober up tomorrow and think about it again. It's not a good environment right now. It really, DC's hardly making any product. The distribution, I will say, is probably the best it's been in a long, long time. Because with multiple distributors, I'm getting the best service I've had in ages, probably since the early 90s. I mean, before, because it just got really, really terrible there for a while. I mean, I was dealing with 15 to 25% damages, shortages every single week, and that's just a business killer. And fortunately, I don't have to deal exclusively with Diamond and the Sparta branch anymore, because that was just the worst. I was dealing with another branch. Oh, they were great. They're like, oh, no, the Sparta's close to you. You're going to start getting it from there. And they just destroyed my business. That had more to do with it being closed than anything else. When the pandemic came and all the other problems came, I was like, I'm fed up with it. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah, it was a good time to close. Go out on a high note. Folks in the chat, appreciate you being here tonight. We, as I always say, we don't have a show without you. And as always, while you were here, we just hope you had a blast. See you next time. Good night.